All right, here we go. Charli Baltimore, welcome to VladTV.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think we did an interview maybe, like 14 years ago, a little short, a few set of clips, but this is our first real sit down.
Yeah, I think we did one way long ago, like when my career first started, but that was like ages ago.
Absolutely. Well, this is our first real sit down, so I want to start in the very beginning.
Okay.
So, born and raised in Philly.
Yes.
Okay. And your dad is German?
Yes. My dad was, he's white and German, and my mom is Black.
Okay. I mean, we're talking about the late 70s, early 80s. You didn't really see a lot of mixed kids like that, like you see now.
Right.
Was there ever any sort of issues growing up in a biracial family like that?
Absolutely. I mean, it was, like taboo, even and even though it was, a little later, like you said, late 70s, early 80s, it still was taboo for to see a white man and a Black woman. And then at one point, my mother had moved us to Jackson, Tennessee, which is like the deep, 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 deep South. So it was a lot of, racial tension and them not understanding. Like, my mom is a brown-skinned woman. They would see my mom and be like, well, who is she? It was pretty rough. But then eventually we moved back to the East Coast. And I think by the time we moved back, it was, it was a little less tense. But, I mean, it always was, a little bit of tension with that whole situation. So...
Right, especially with a white father and a Black mother, that was a little more rare.
Right, it's usually the opposite. So,
right.
The dirty looks, even, I remember a situation when my daughter was really young and I had her in this kind of elite private school, and my mom was taking her to school for me because I was always on the road, and people asking her, oh, are you the nanny? Just really, obnoxious, racist stuff. It was crazy. And that was in the 90s. So it's I don't think it ever really goes away. I still think there's a little taboo, a stigma with it or whatever.
So what was Philly like in the 80s?
It was rough. Philly is a rough city anyway to grow up in. So, it definitely was a lot of... I don't know, just craziness, But I guess when you're from there, you just adapt to it. So it doesn't seem that crazy to you. If an outsider were to come in and witness it, they'd be like, this is wild. But I also feel like Philly breeds a toughness in you where you can just kind of get through any situation. So...
I mean, right. If we're talking about the mid 80s, when you were still a preteen, I mean, that's when crack started to hit, the East Coast. And did you see things kind of change as that started to happen?
Absolutely. I mean, even, the part of Philly I grew up in was a really rough part of Philly. So crack was everywhere. It was insane. And then myself, I was a teen mom. So, even trying to just, still be a teenager, a kid myself, and still raise your child, it was a lot because crack was still running rampant through the hood. So.
Okay, so let's talk about that. You had your first daughter when you were 15?
Yes.
Okay, so you got pregnant at 14?
Yeah, 14.
Okay, can you talk about that situation?
I mean, it's not really much to talk about. It was a situation where I kind of felt like I wanted a kid. I don't know what I was searching for in my life at that time, but I felt like I was old enough and mature enough to have a kid, which obviously was not the brightest logic. But in my mind, I'm like, oh, I can handle this. I can do this. So obviously it was not the best move. But I always say, if I could have waited a few years later and still had the same kid, I would have definitely done it at a later stage. But I mean, it just makes you grow up fast, and if anything, it just embeds a more hustler spirit in you. Okay, I have to make it work, because at that point, when I got pregnant, everybody's like, you're never going to finish school. You're going to be on welfare forever. You're never going to amount to anything. So I think it's just really instilled in me, like, I have to make it for my daughter. Like, I have to do this.
Right, because you're a freshman in high school at the time when you got pregnant?
Yeah, and I went to Catholic school, so that wasn't riding too well with them. I wound up leaving the Catholic school and I went to like a small like private school. Actually, first I went to a school for like teen moms, and that wasn't working out. So I wound up going to like a smaller like private school, and I wound up actually graduating a year earlier than I would have. And then I went to like a junior college. So I mean, I was really trying, I was focused. Like I wanted to be a good mom. So I wound up getting an associate's degree and working as a paralegal for a hot minute.
Okay. And your daughter's father, was he about the same age or older?
No, he was a little older than me. But I mean, honestly, he was kind of out of the picture basically as soon as I had her. He was never really like a part of our situation. His mom was like a second mom to me, but as far as him, no.
Well, right, because you said that he was abusive,
Yeah.
and he actually gave you a black eye at one point.
He did a lot more than that, but he definitely was, it was toxic, put it like that. It was very toxic.
Okay, so if the black eye was just one of the many incidents, what was the worst thing he ever did during that time?
He pushed me down a flight of steps when I was 8 months pregnant.
Oh my God. Are you serious?
Yeah.
He pushes pregnant girlfriend who's 8 months pregnant. So you're at your biggest, essentially. Yes. You're huge, about to pop. And he decided to push you down the stairs, which, I mean, number one, could have killed you, but more likely could have really hurt the baby.
Absolutely. That was the worst thing that, pretty much ever. That might have been one of the worst things that ever happened to me. But yeah, that's what I mean. Like, the toxicity was unbelievable.
Okay. I mean, when you fast forward 2023, did he eventually come back around? Did you have some sort of relationship with him, or does your daughter have a relationship with him?
No, because, as I said, his mother was I was very, very close to his mom. And as I got older and, I was in a better situation to help her with her life and take care of her. And plus, she helped me a lot when I was on the road with my daughter and stuff. I did whatever I could to help her. And I just didn't feel like as her own, he was her only child, that he was doing his part in, trying to help his mom. I wasn't even worried at that point about, the fact that he wasn't in my daughter's life. I was more so concerned about, his mom was in poor health. I was really wanting him to step up and, look out for your mom. Like, you're her only child. And I didn't feel like he did that. So it just made me just basically act like he kind of never existed, which I'm still in that same mind frame today.
Well, that's his loss.
Pretty much. It definitely is.
Yeah. Okay, so even with being a teenage mom, like you said, you finished high school, you go to college,
yes,
you get an associate's degree, and you start to work and support yourself.
Right.
Now, if we fast forward a little bit to like 1994, you're around 20 years old at the time. Now, you're not at all linked to this situation, but there's a lot of drama that starts to happen with Tupac during this time. Were you a Tupac fan during this time?
Not really. I mean, I guess as, growing up in Philadelphia, I mean, obviously there were Pac fans, but most of like the Philadelphia area was more into the whole New York scene. So like West Coast music, obviously like NWA, they love that. But like, you might find a few Pac fans, but for the most part, like Philly people were really more so into the whole New York scene because that's what was really like popping at the time.
Well, I remember that year, Dear Mama comes out. I mean, did you like that song considering you were a mom yourself?
No, yeah. I did like it, but, I wasn't like, like a diehard Pac fan. Like, I was like a Wu-Tang fan. I was like an Onyx fan. I was, I liked more hardcore hip hop. So to me, that wasn't what that was.
Okay. Well, you're not involved in the situation at all, but I kind of want to set the stage a little bit. In 1994, Biggie ends up getting married to Faith Evans.
Yes.
And around the same time, Lil' Kim said that she got pregnant by Biggie and had an abortion.
Okay.
So there was a lot of craziness that was already going on in Biggie's life on a personal level. And on your part, you also gave birth to another daughter, right?
Yes, in 95.
Okay, in 95. And what was the relationship with the father in that case?
I mean, we're on okay terms. Like, he's not a bad guy. They have a relationship. So that's a whole different situation from my first daughter. We didn't have a relationship at that time, but we wound up, coming to terms and getting something established.
So essentially, by this time, you're a single mom with 2 kids.
Yes.
And you're around 20 at the time. How hard is that? I mean, considering, you're a paralegal, but that's not a ton of money, obviously.
Right.
And you have 2 kids and, you don't really have the full support of the fathers. So how are you getting by?
I mean, I was working my butt off. Like, trust me, I was making it work. I'm not saying it was easy, but I did have the support of my first daughter's mom. She was a lot of help to me. So, trust me, single moms will find a way to make things work. Like, we're hustlers. So, I mean, I wasn't like destitute or anything. Like, I had my own little apartment. Like, I was just making ends meet as best as I could.
Okay. And around that time, Biggie's starting to really blow up.
Right.
Were you a Biggie fan before you met him?
I was, but I wasn't familiar with like all of his music. I remember, I think at one point, me and my girlfriends had came to New York and went to the tunnel for the first time. And, literally all they were playing was his music. So I think once that happened and Biggie was like really starting to take off, like his music was really like, really flying like around in the Philly area.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he became very quickly, essentially the biggest rapper out of the East Coast.
Right. You're right. Yeah. He did.
I mean, after that first album, Ready to Die comes out, and then the Juicy and the One More Chance remix, and then he's hopping on everyone else's stuff. It's like it was a total domination at the time.
No, it was. Well, we actually met at one of his shows in Philly. So, yeah, he definitely started taking off really fast.
Okay, so let's talk about that show. So Biggie had a show in Philly, and you and your girlfriends went to go see him.
Yes, we went to go see the show. After the show, we wanted some pictures, and I remember asking, it was like girls everywhere. It was literally girls driving by, throwing their underwear at him. Like, that's how insane it was. It was just chaotic. And I think I asked him for a picture, and he was like, well, can I take a picture of you? So I'm like, what? It's kind of like we're bantering back and forth. And he had a little camera and I had a little camera, and we're literally like just standing there like taking pictures of each other, which, obviously was funny. And then we wound up taking a picture together, and I think he just asked me for my number, and I gave him my number, not thinking anything of it or whatever. It wasn't anything crazy. I just gave him my number and kind of like went on about my way.
Okay, so what happened next after you guys exchanged numbers?
He called me. I don't remember how soon after that he called, but he called me, and if I'm not mistaken, we talked for a little while on the phone, maybe, I don't know, like a week or maybe like a week and a half. And he said they were having a party in New York somewhere, and would me and my friends like to come to the party. So we went to the party, and we hung out or whatever. And then, fine and well, everything was fine. I think I came back to Philly, and then they had another party not too long after that. But in the midst of all of that, we still would talk on the phone a lot, like, just getting to know each other or whatever. And then I think the second time I went to the second party I went to, rather, he was like, he had a show out of town somewhere. And he was like, would you be down to go to the show with me? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't have any clothes. I don't have anything with me. He was like, don't worry about any of that. Like, I'll make sure you good. Like, don't trip or whatever. And I'm like in a dress. I do remember this. Like, I'm making this long, like, dressy dress. And we're at the airport and I'm on a flight in this long, like, dressed up gown. And probably like, where the hell is she going? And I don't know where we were. I don't remember like the city, but I mean, it was fine. He sent, somebody out to get me, some clothes and essentials or whatever. It wasn't anything like, romantic. We were just like hanging out. And again, came home. We talked on the phone. And then I don't think anything became like romantic until I flew to LA. I went to LA to meet him because he was doing the Martin show. And that's kind of where, our relationship, became romantic.
Well, you said, I guess the best way to describe Biggie would be like Barry White. He could charm you out of anything, even your clothes.
Well, I'll attest to that. That works. That works.
Okay. But at the time, Biggie was still married to Faith.
He was.
But they were separated, I guess.
Yes, they were separated from what he said. So, I mean, I'm just going off the information that he was giving me.
Okay. I mean, was that something that became an issue? Like, hey, listen, I'm messing with you, but you're still married. Because I remember there was that Vibe cover where it was him with Faith, like in the drop top. You know what I'm talking about? So, like, their relationship was being kind of pumped up in a way.
I think that came out, like, obviously back then you would shoot something and it would take months to come out or whatever. So I don't remember if it came out, before we became romantic or during. I really don't. I know it was in the early beginning stages, but I mean, from his account, they got married really fast and they separated. So I was going off of what he was telling me. And then I'm young as hell, I don't really know. So I'm just like, okay, well, you want to believe what somebody tells you that you like, so.
Okay, well, before you guys met, there was a whole quad shooting situation with Tupac. Mm-hmm. And there was also the rape case that happened, which he got convicted for. So Tupac was in jail while you and Biggie are getting to know each other, but at the time, Suge Knight is trying to get him out on bond and get him to join Death Row. Mm-hmm. And then the Source Awards situation happened.
Right.
Now, Pac was still in jail during the time, but Suge knew that he was coming out and he was joining Death Row. And that's when he got on stage at the Source Awards and he said, any artists out there that want to be an artist and stay a star, don't have to worry about the executive producer trying to be all up in the videos, on the records, dancing. Yeah. Come to Death Row.
Right.
Now, were you there when that happened or no?
No.
Okay. But Biggie was there, Un was there, Junior Mafia was there, C Gutter was there, and backstage it almost turned deadly.
Right.
Because this was a very serious situation. Suge just dissed Puff on stage in front of the whole East Coast in New York.
Right.
And it potentially was about to turn dangerous.
Right.
Did you and Big talk about that after it happened?
Honestly, I don't recall us ever talking about that, and I don't remember the timeline well enough to know if that happened during, after we met. I kind of want to say that happened before we met, but I'm not sure. But I don't ever remember having a conversation with him about that.
Okay, fair enough. So you guys are having this relationship with each other, but he's the rapper, you're the girlfriend.
Right.
You're not telling him that you also are interested in rapping and so forth until a situation happens with a voicemail.
Until a situation happens with what?
With a voicemail that you left for him.
Yeah. Right. Well, I wasn't really, I rapped when I was really young. So, once I had my daughters, that kind of just I put that in the back of my mind and just was like, I have to focus on what I have to focus on. But yes, the voicemails, when he got caught with the girls and I had accessed the code is when I, made a whole rap about everything I had heard on the voicemail. And, he was like, you really have skills. So in my mind, I'm like, yeah, okay, you're just saying anything to deflect off the situation. But he was serious. And so his advice to me was, I think that you should try to write a rhyme every day. You're going to get nicer. You're going to get nicer. And he was serious. He wasn't just trying to like placate me and say, I'm just trying to get out of this situation that I'm caught in. He was that serious. So that's basically what I started doing. Like I rapped when I was in like, or maybe like right before middle school. And I used to write a lot of poetry, but I never really thought it would go anywhere. So when he said that, I took it seriously.
Well, right. The biggest rapper in the world is telling you that he's interested in your rapping. So
right.
You might as well take advantage of it at that point.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you started writing, and did you kind of see yourself getting better as you kept writing?
Yes. And he would critique it and, give me, pointers. And I mean, he was always like, you really like for a female, like he said he never met a female that could write the way I could write. But that was always like my, I guess, favorite part of the whole thing was the actual writing. Not so much the rhyming, but the writing. And I think he appreciated that because he was such a prolific writer. So, yeah. I mean, the more I wrote, the better I got.
Well, Lil' Kim was signed to him as his female artist at the time. And from what I understand, he used to write for her all the time.
Right.
I mean, you even found reference tracks later on of him, writing her raps and so forth. But I mean, that makes perfect sense. I mean, in terms of that being his artist. But would he ever write for you?
Never. He never wrote.
Never
wrote for me.
Okay. Were you around Lil' Kim at all during this time?
Yes. Well, I mean, we were in the Get Money video together.
Okay. Well, before that, though, because we're going to get to that. Before the Get Money video, I mean, you are Big's girlfriend, and him and Lil' Kim are kind of having their little side thing happening.
I didn't know that, though. I didn't know. So, yeah, okay. I would come on the road, and we would see each other. I mean, we did the Get Money video together. Obviously, we would cross paths a lot. So, not a lot, but I definitely have seen her when I would be on the road or, they may have a show somewhere and I'm there or whatever. So.
Okay. So you're Biggie's girlfriend and, Biggie is continuing to blow up and do bigger things. And at one point he puts together the Junior Mafia album.
Right.
And the lead single for that is Get Money.
Right.
Now, from what I understand, didn't he want Faith Evans to be in the music video originally?
No, I don't even think they were on speaking terms. He wanted me to do the video, but at the time that, he started talking about the video, I just so happened to have blonde hair. So I remember him telling me, now you have to remember, I've never been in any music videos. I don't know anything about the music industry. He's like, I think you should dye your hair back, dark. And I was like, why? And, he's a guy, so he doesn't understand how hard it is to dye your hair blonde anyway. So I'm like, look, I just went through all this torture to get my hair blonde, and now you want me to dye it dark? And he never said, I guess in his mind, he knew, obviously, people would take it as some sort of diss or, he was coming at Faith. But he definitely was trying to get me to dye my hair dark. But I don't think he ever told me the reason why. And I just was so against it. No, I'm not doing that. It took forever to get it blonde or whatever. Not understanding that, the ramifications of it eventually were going to turn into, oh, they're dissing Faith. She's trying to be Faith in the video. First of all, I would never do anything like that. If I would have had the knowledge to know, okay, this is what people are going to think, I would have definitely dyed my hair back dark. But, once the video came out, then it was, oh, they're dissing Faith. She's dressed up like Faith. And I'm like, no, that was never, ever, ever the concept of what Get Money was supposed to be about. But unfortunately, it turned out that way.
Right. I think when most fans watch that video, it's like, oh, he has a girl who we don't know yet, who seems to be playing Faith Evans, because here's this light-skinned black girl with blonde hair. Like, how often do you see that? Right?
No. Yeah, that definitely was not. That was not what that was supposed to be. And I'm like, oh my God. And he's like, I told you to dye your hair dark. Like, and I'm like, well, I'm thinking maybe if he would have explained to me, like, listen, people are going to take this way and that way. Obviously, yeah, I would have been like, okay, cool. Yeah, no, I don't want people to think that. But I mean, this went on for years, like years and years later, people still say it. And I'm pretty sure I have tried to rectify that so many times. Like, I was not dissing her. We were not, it wasn't supposed to, look the way, it came out as far as, oh, she's portraying Faith. It just so happened I had blonde hair and I just like refused to dye it.
I mean, yeah, because when you watch the video, it looks like...
No, it does. I mean, yeah, even when I see
it looks like, okay, Big is accusing Faith of cheating.
Right.
And he's throwing all her clothes out for being a cheater.
No.
And here's this girl who looks like Faith a little bit in this video, and it's like, it looks crazy.
All over her hair color, which is insane. But yeah, it was not supposed to be like that at all.
Wasn't it around this time that Biggie gets Faith pregnant?
No. That was Get Money was like really early on in our relationship, so that didn't happen for a while later, rather.
Okay. Well, how did you take being in a relationship with Big and suddenly he gets his wife, who I guess he's technically married to at the time, pregnant?
Honestly, I think it was his mom that told me. I don't even think it was him. Like, his mom was, telling him, you need to tell her what's going on. And, and I guess he was kind of scared to tell me. And if I'm not mistaken, it was her that told me. And I was just kind of like, in shock. I mean, we would have moments in our relationship where we would break up for short periods of time. I think the longest was maybe a month, 2 months. But, we definitely would have our little spats and go into our on again, off again stage. So I think the way he tried to explain it was, it happened during one of our on again, off again situations.
So he basically said it was a break baby.
Well, guys are going to say whatever they need to say to make themselves look less at fault when they know they're really at fault, but I mean, I wasn't there. I don't know exactly what happened. I just remember how it all unfolded once the mom told me.
Well, around that time, Tupac gets out of prison on bond.
Mm-hmm.
And he instantly joins death row. Now, there's this famous photo of Tupac and Faith Evans with Pac has his arm around Faith.
Mm-hmm.
And it's basically not a good look because technically Big is still married to Faith.
Right.
Did you and Big ever talk about that photo?
The actual photo?
Yeah.
No, I don't think he ever talked to me about that actual photo, no.
Right, because Big kind of addressed some of that. I mean, I remember on the song Brooklyn's Finest, he was like, gotta go, Coolio, yo, it's getting too hot. If Faith had twins, she'd probably have 2 Pacs. Get it? 2 Pacs?
But you would have to know Big to know his personality and sense of humor. Like, that was kind of typical Big, you know what I mean? I don't even think he meant anything super disrespectful by it. It's just, that's just how kind of his mind worked. He just had, he had a crazy sense of humor and, obviously he was super lyrical. So it fit with the rhyme for him.
I mean, did you guys ever speak about Pac's relationship with Faith?
Yeah, we did. I don't really think that Big believed that. I don't think that he believed that. I don't think that he thought there was something that transpired. He was just, thinking, now it would be basically called trolling. So I think he basically felt at that time that Pac was, trolling him.
Well, I mean, I can't tell you, I know a lot of people that were around Tupac. They were very close to him. And I remember one of them told me that they got a phone call one night and Pac was like, yo, I just slept with Faith. Like he was actually calling them right there in the other room.
Well, the only people that know that are obviously Faith and Pac. So, I would never speculate on what they did or what they didn't do. Like, you know what I mean? Even back then, like, that wasn't my place to say either way.
Fair enough. Okay, so Tupac gets out and he feels some type of way about Biggie, whether he truly felt whether he set him up or whether he felt like, okay, Big's the number one guy, and by going at him, I can get to number one. Either way, he ends up dropping Hit 'Em Up. And what's interesting about Hit 'Em Up is actually uses the beat from Get Money,
right?
Which is the video you were with. And I guess you were with Biggie the first time he heard Hit 'Em Up.
Yes. We were pulling up to somebody's video shoot and, like Puff was there. It was like a whole bunch of people there. And, we hear the record and everybody's just like, everybody's mood just shifts. Cause it was, it was a pretty vicious record. It definitely was not, it definitely was not a good day after that. Let's say that. I mean, it was kind of shocking and, I think in Big's mind, he was just really trying to figure out like what the fuck is going on really? Because, at some point him and Pac were friends. So he's not really understanding at that point why Pac is going after him to this extent. Like what is he's just on, he's just trying to put his foot on his neck and he didn't really understand it or like why he was doing it.
I mean, well, yeah, there's been tons of diss records in hip hop leading up to this. And I mean, dissing and, beef is part of the hip hop fabric. But I felt with Hit 'Em Up, it got taken to a whole other level. People could diss you or whatever, but it starts off with, this is why I fucked your bitch. And
yeah, it was like super, personal and very disrespectful. So, I mean, obviously Big was upset, you know what I mean? Because he really just didn't understand where all this animosity was coming from at that time.
Well, yeah. And from what I understand, I've talked to Lil C's and some other people about this, and everyone in Junior Mafia was upset. And they wanted to jump in the booth and, diss Biggie.
Everybody was upset. But I think on top of Big, being upset, he was also confused and also a little hurt because, at one point, they weren't like best of friends, but they definitely had a relationship. They definitely were okay with each other. So he didn't understand where all of the animosity was coming from.
Well, yeah. From what I understand, Biggie told all the Junior Mafia members that if anyone drops a diss track to Tupac, they're kicked out of the group permanently.
Mafia, we like, oh, we gotta do it, bro. We're about to respond to this shit, my nigga. And Big heard it, and Big was like, all right, he was pissed, but then he was like, if anybody do a record responding to that shit, don't bother calling me, don't bother coming around me. I will not fuck with you if any of y'all do a record to this. Cause Junior Mafia got their own art. They rap, he like, yo, you do that shit, I'm not fucking with you. I just think Big total intentions was like, yeah, he was heated about it, but his thing was, I want to get up with this dude.
Right. I mean, I think maybe in Big's mind, he felt like, and again, I'm just speaking hypothetically because he never actually said this, but I think maybe he felt like, maybe I can get to the bottom of this and figure out where all this is coming from because, for a while, everybody was kind of clueless as to what the hell is the problem? Like, why is this getting so intense?
Right. So this happens, and now things are intense between Death Row and Bad Boy.
Right.
And then the Soul Train Awards happens. And this becomes the first time that Biggie and Tupac are face to face with each other for years.
Uh-huh.
Were you there at the Soul Train Awards?
No, I'm not even sure of exactly what you're talking about.
Well, there's a situation backstage at the Soul Train Awards where Biggie and Tupac, their entourages, run into each other.
Uh-huh.
And it almost turns into a whole thing. People start to draw guns and everything else like that. Don Cornelius actually has to step in between the situation and basically just tell people to just get in random cars before they start shooting each other, essentially. I think C. Gutta ends up pulling out a gun and so forth. And, Lance on Rivera talks about the whole situation where he tells C. Gutta to shoot Suge, if things start to escalate.
Wow.
And yeah, the whole thing is a mess, essentially.
Yeah, I don't remember that story at all. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember that at all.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've heard this story from multiple people who were there. Mm-hmm. It was a disaster. And I remember Biggie even said the thing that kind of shocked him was that he knew Tupac. They used to hang out. Pac used to come to Brooklyn, hang out with them. They were in hotel rooms together and so forth. And he said that when he saw Pac that night, he saw Bishop from Juice. He didn't see his friend Tupac Shakur anymore. He saw a character that was just kind of going crazy.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have any recollection of that specific story, but I mean, that kind of makes sense when it's worded like that.
And then Vibe magazine does a feature story on Biggie and Puffy. And on the cover, it has both of them with the caption, East versus West.
Right. I remember
and
that.
This becomes what I feel is the kind of the transformative moment where it just becomes, it goes from being a beef between two rappers or two record labels to suddenly becoming two coasts of America.
Well, I feel like a lot of it was media infused. Like, it wasn't any social media or anything back then. So it's just all like magazines and just, basically kind of like word of mouth stuff. But, for a magazine as prestigious as Vibe was back then to put East Coast versus West Coast or whatever it said, it's just kind of like fueling the fire, Because now it's like people are starting to take sides and, it just became like a bigger situation than it had to be, to me.
I mean, yeah, I remember I interviewed Tretch, who was really close to Pac, and he blames that magazine cover for a lot of the problems.
You know what killed Pac and Big? Let's get some real shit right here. I might not have too much longer because I don't give a fuck. After they died, I died with them. I'm here haunting niggas with the truth. When you got that motherfucking Vibe magazine, right? When you see Big and Puff on the cover, East versus West. When I saw that fucking cover, I said, man, what the fuck is going on? Gangsters don't read articles. Niggas on the East Coast like, yo, it's on. Wait till them West Coast niggas come out here. West Coast like, oh, it's on. Wait till them East Coast niggas come out here. So it baited up a whole shit that fucking went down that had just so many cycles of all Biggie followers and riders, all Pac riders, motherfuckers that ain't even know neither one of them, gangster ass motherfuckers. It could have really turned into a motherfucking East Coast, West Coast war.
Right. For escalating everything to, a different level.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this happens, but things are still relatively calm on both sides. And Biggie starts working on a second album, Life After Death. Mm-hmm. And around that time, you, Biggie, and Little C's were, I guess, in a rental van, and things go crazy.
You and Big get arrested for weed possession. And the car got repossessed or something like that. Mm-hmm. Then Big go out and he chooses Chevy Lumina.
Yeah. Say he wanted to ride low key. They come out with the Lumina van. Like, yo, we gonna drive this? B.I. like, yeah, perfect. Perfect. Fuck you mean perfect? Hop in, nigga. I got in, driver's seat. I'm driving. And the dude we used to buy the cars from, he's in front of me. Before we even got out, I hit the back of him once already because the brakes were shot. The shit was on the rotors. Big never drove before, don't know how to drive. So he understands none of my lingo. I'm like, yo, B.I., these brakes is fucked up. Let's drive. We need to be low key anyway. I'm like, yo, but these brakes is shut. I just ran into the salesman that we get the car from. Drive, dog. All right. Gets on the highway, and we paid the toll. You know that north and south. I get on the joint to hit that turn, and the car just, and we wound up skirting all the way to the other side of the highway, and ran dead into a rail. Boom! My face hit the steering wheel. I think Charli Baltimore was in the car with us. She almost went through the window.
Damn.
And B.I. was stuck in the car. He couldn't get out the car. So we had to wait for somebody. I'm leaking blood out my mouth. Shit leaking. And they had to wait till somebody come and take off the door. So they didn't get him out because he couldn't move his leg.
Yeah. We were in a very, very bad car accident. I was in the center part of it was a van. So C's is driving, Big is in the front. I'm in the center part, and C's miscalculated some sort of turn. Car flips over. We wind up on the other side of the highway, on a across the median into where traffic is coming the opposite direction, and we're teeter-tottering on an embankment where the car literally could have flipped over. I went through the windshield. I'm laying on top of the car, and I'm thinking it's raining, but it's blood pouring down my face, and Big's like, don't move. He's stuck in the car. C's is not in the car, so I'm thinking he went off the embankment, but he actually was just he had got out and ran down the road a little bit because he hit his mouth on the steering wheel. He lost all of his teeth. I don't even know how long we were there. Couldn't have been that long. But again, this is before cell phones. So it's not like any cell phones or anything where you could call, I guess, another car, maybe, a passerby alerted somebody of the accident. And when they came, they took me first because by me going through the windshield, I had a head injury. And I guess from EMS standards, head injuries are the most severe. So they were taking me, and I remember them trying to get Big out of the car, but because of his size and the way that the accident had pushed his seat into the glove box, he was stuck. So they had to get the jaws of life to get him out. So his whole leg was broken, his femur, everything was broken. And we all were in the hospital. And, thankfully, nobody had any life-threatening injuries, but it was pretty intense. So, because of Big size and everything, he was in physical rehabilitation for months and months and months trying to learn how to walk again after his surgery. And while he was in there, he was still, I think the first part of Life After Death was done, but then by him being in there, and I'm pretty sure he was bored to death, he decided to make it a double album. So the second part of that album, a lot of it was done in the hospital.
Well, right. The song Long Kiss Goodnight kind of references that accident. He said, "You still tickle me. I used to be as strong as Ripple B till Lil C's crippled me."
Yep.
Because he had to use a cane after he got out of rehab.
Yeah.
There's the line, "You lose teeth like Lil C's."
Yeah, I mean, again, Big's humor and just his style, that was very typical Big. But it was rough because, again, his weight and everything played a huge factor in his healing. So he had to basically stay in an inpatient rehab. It wasn't like a situation where, you break your leg and, you go to the rehab 3 times a week or whatever. He had to stay in the hospital and actually learn how to walk again.
Now, was it after that he came up with the name Charli Baltimore for you?
We both came up with the name because what happened was when I was released from the hospital, I would go, up there to visit him, and we would watch movies and stuff. And Long Kiss Goodnight was one of the movies that we watched. And we're watching a movie and we're like, that's crazy. Like, she's in a car accident, he's healing from the car accident. I got a cast on and a neck brace and stitches in my head and everything. And we're just laid up watching this crazy movie. And I was like, yo, that name is crazy. And he was like, that's your name. That's your rap name. That's a crazy name. So that's how it came about.
Okay. So how long after you guys made that name did he kind of talk to Lance and Rivera about signing you to the label? Did that come like way later, or is it around that time?
Well, I really wasn't even aware that, like how far into stuff that I don't even remember Big ever telling me that he was talking to Un about me, honestly. Like, it was like such the beginning stages of everything. But he did talk about forming a group called the Commission. So, I'm listening, but I'm not listening, because at the same time, his new album was about to come out. So I'm not thinking this will be something that, happens like in the immediate future. I'm just thinking, okay, it sounds good. I'm still going to keep, doing what I was doing, which was still writing rhymes every day. And, we would talk about it here and there, but he was in the midst of trying to get Life After Death out. So it wasn't like something that we were like, like, okay, this is about to happen like right now. But he definitely would come to me sometime with ideas about how he wanted to present me and how he would want to bring me out and stuff like that. So, but I don't remember any specific conversations like, oh, I talked to Un, and yeah, I don't remember anything like that.
Right, because I think, what was it on the song Victory, where he talks about the commission
What's
and the
beef?
commission.
What's beef? Where he names all of us, the whole commission.
Exactly.
Yeah, what's beef?
It was you, of course, him, Jay-Z, Puffy, Lance, Lil C's. I don't know if I'm forgetting anybody, but I think that's the whole commission group right there.
Yeah, I don't know if oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's all of them. Mm-hmm. I think so.
So at one point, Tupac gets killed in Las Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess Biggie was in the studio recording Nasty Girl when he heard the news. Mm-hmm. Were you with Big when this actually happened, or no?
No, I don't think I was with him when Pac died. I just remember him being like really upset. Well, Pac didn't die right away. So he was in the hospital for a few days. And I remember Big like really truly being concerned and upset about it. Like, that, like, this is fucked up. Like, it wasn't a situation where there was some like intense hatred where he's, like, I hope he dies or anything like that. It was really like true concern. Like, this is crazy. So.
Well, yeah, I remember Faith, she talked about the situation. I guess Big called her when he heard the news and he started to cry over the whole situation.
I mean, he really was upset. Like, people think they had this intense hatred towards one another. And, I can't speak for Pac. I don't know Pac, but I know Big was really, truly, devastated behind it. Because it was really shocking, especially at that time.
I mean, yeah, Faith said, I think it's fair to say that he was probably afraid, given everything that was going on at the time and all the hype and that was put on the so-called beef, and he didn't really have it in his heart against anyone.
Right.
So, from what I understand, like, he was hoping at one point that they would just work it out because nothing really happened. I mean, from everyone I talked to, and I really kind of looked at this situation, done a lot of interviews, Biggie did not set up Tupac to get shot at Quad Studios.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. He just happened to be there, and Pac was there to do a verse for, I think, like Lil Sean.
Yeah,
and
I don't know
him.
Who he was doing a verse for, but that is absolutely not the scenario. And it's just crazy that, Pac said what he said and people just automatically just roll with that. Like, that used to fuck Big up. He's like, I don't understand. Like, I didn't have anything to do with this situation. Like, why does he think that I would do that? So.
Right. You even told me that after Pac died, you guys would roll around and sometimes Biggie would listen to the Machiavelli album.
All the time. all the time. So, I no matter what was going on, he didn't let that apply to how he felt about his music. And I think a lot of Big's, the whole Pac scenario really more so confused Big. He just didn't understand like why he was coming at him so hard. He just didn't understand why. Like, what is the reason?
I mean, when you look at the Pac situation, you fast forward 2023, I've done multiple interviews with Keefe D where he essentially talked about the whole situation where, Pac got into it with a guy from the Southside Crips. They beat him up in the MGM lobby, and then they went and got some guns and ended up killing him right afterwards. And this is a story that's pretty common right now, but at the time, no one really knew. And you have this icon from the West Coast who gets killed, who's beefing with this icon from the East Coast. And some people are thinking, oh, well, Biggie has something to do with it, or Puffy has something to do with it, or whatever.
Right.
Did those type of things, were they discussed when you guys were together? And was he bothered by those rumors?
There were so many crazy rumors going around at that time. Like, at some point you just kind of have to shut all of that out. And then you have to remember, like, he's in the middle of trying to work on his new album, and for him, that was a lot of pressure because, Ready to Die is like a classic. So it's like, how they say the sophomore jinx, he's trying to top himself from his first album. And it was just a lot. It was a lot going on. He had a lot going on in his mind around that time.
Okay, so at one point, he goes to L.A.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where he shot the Hypnotize video, right?
Yes. He still had the cane from the car accident.
Exactly. And you actually went out to L.A. with him initially.
I did. Not initially. I went out. They were already out there for a few weeks, and then I went out there.
Okay, so you go out to meet Biggie to hang out with him in L.A., and you guys are in a hotel room, and you go through his bag.
No.
No?
I didn't go through his bag at first.
Okay.
What happened was let me see if I can remember this in the right order. There was some nail polish, women's nail polish or something, some sort of women's toiletries in the room, which led me to ask, what is this or whatever. And I don't know what he said. Obviously you had a woman in your room if there's women's toiletries in here. Conversation escalated. All of my stuff, like, my suitcase and everything, I had only been there for maybe a day or two. All of my stuff was in the bedroom. It was a suite. He gets mad at me and locks me out of the bedroom. He pushed me out into the suite area, because we were arguing or whatever over the nail polish stuff. I don't know what he was telling me. So I'm sitting there and there's just bag, and I can see that there's a big thing, like a stack of pictures. And, I'm like, what is this? So, I look at the pictures and it's pictures of him with a disposable camera on his back. And he's taking pictures of a girl sucking his dick. And, obviously he's not a little guy. So he's got the big stomach. He's got the watch, the ring, everything is on in the picture. Everything's on in the photo. He's taking the pictures like this. And there's tons of them. It's it couldn't have been one disposable camera. You had to have been running through these things like crazy. So I'm like, what the fuck? So I flip out. I'm going crazy. I'm like, what the fuck are these pictures? And, I'm spazzing out. His watch and his ring. Puff had just bought him some crazy watch, and he had this crazy diamond ring that he had just gotten for Christmas. But before I even did that, before I even got to his jewelry, because the argument was so severe, and I don't know why he did it, but he cut up and ripped up all of my clothes and my shoes and bags and everything, and he threw them out from, the bedroom. So the bedroom door had a lock, or I don't know if he put something up to the door, so I couldn't get in there. And he just took all my stuff and he threw it out, and it was all like ruined, like everything. So I was like, oh, okay, you want to do that? So I took his ring and his watch and I threw it off the balcony into the pool. And by that point, I guess I had said what I did through the door. And then when he came out, it was just a melee, pretty much. Like, there was room service in there, and they, when they bring you tea or coffee, it's in those big silver kettles. One of those went against the wall. There was shit breaking everywhere. It was a mess. Long story short, Puff came, police came, and we were banned from the hotel on top of thousands of dollars worth of damage being done to the hotel room. So much so, in fact, that after Big died, homicide detectives came to interview me because I guess they had gotten the police report of what transpired in that hotel room. So it was bad. It was insane.
So I guess the police had to go check to make sure that you didn't kill him in retaliation for that whole situation.
Literally, like, the whole time, like, they actually flew to New York to interview me, and they literally made me go step by step through this whole entire situation. I'm like, I can't believe I'm telling this story to the police. But yeah, they wanted all the details, like, do you know anybody in California? I'm like, no, like, it definitely wasn't me, but I can understand, like, they're like, okay, well, there's a police report of him fighting this girl, 2 weeks before he died. So I guess they had to follow all their leads.
I guess the funny part about the story in retrospect, because you can laugh at it, years later, was that when he was caught with the pictures, he tried to use what I call the Shaggy defense. It wasn't me.
Oh, yeah. That was the best part. Because it was a stoned face. It wasn't me. It wasn't like, his eyes weren't big, or, if someone's lying and, like, they just know they're super caught. I mean, the excuses were running the gamut. It wasn't me. So I'm like, okay, so there's another black man with a stomach of this size with the same ring and the same watch that you have. And then he's like, I'm telling you, Ma, that's not me. So then I was like, oh, okay, so it's not you. So you're just walking around with random pictures of some other black man's dick in this girl's mouth. Like, explain this, make it make sense to me. Like, his excuses were running the gamut. They were crazy.
Well, and I guess the crazy part also about this, because in 2023, everyone has a phone with a digital camera. So you take a picture, it's in your phone, you're done. But during that time, you're talking about a disposable camera, he actually had to go to a photo match
and get them developed.
Get these pictures developed.
Yes. And it was a stack of pictures. It had to have been at least 2 disposable cameras, because and all the pictures were the same. I'm like, what the hell is going on? Like, I'm like, my mouth is just wide open, and I'm like, I don't even believe what I'm looking at. And he's like, that's not me. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah.
Right. Someone at Walgreens had to go and develop all these pictures, put them into the
I feel sorry for whoever had to develop those photos.
Okay. And I remember we did an interview with Lil C's. I guess, Big obviously knew about the photos.
Right.
And they were in that bag. And he told C specifically to get rid of that bag.
Right.
And C's just forgot.
We was the hotel we was in. I think we was at the Four Seasons at this one, because we went to like 4 different hotels. We was at the Four Seasons, and he kept telling me, I had my own room, of course, but I would always be in his room. He kept telling me to take this bag out the room for like 2-3 days. Yo, Charlie about to come in. Get that bag out of here. Stolen. All right, when I go downstairs, take it. We go out, do shit. Bag still up there. Next day, same old shit. And one day I was downstairs, and she must have got there. And I just remember D-Rock banging on my door, like, yo, come on, I need you to come upstairs, help me pack his shit. I'm like, pack his shit for what? He's like, yo, we got to get out of here, dog. Shit went down upstairs. I'm like, what? He's like, yo, Charli went in that bag. Her and Big got into it. She threw the nigga ring over the window. She was throwing juices at him. I come in the room, it's wild fucking cranberry juice, all type of shit on the walls.
Damn.
He like, yo, your man had to rush out. I had to get him up out of here, though. He out here, no shoes on, no nothing, shirtless. I'm like, oh, God. What the fuck did I do? I'm like, all right, pack his shit up. Go to the hotel with him now. He's sitting up there barefoot, no shirt on. Like, look, nigga, didn't I tell you to take that bag out? I said, B.I., I know you told me that. I was like, yo, but why she went in my bag? He like, that ain't the point. She wouldn't have went in your bag if the bag wasn't in there. I told you for days to take that bag out of there, bro. He was like, yo, man, I'm sending you home. Fuck that. You gotta go home for a little while.
Yeah, see, I never knew that. I didn't really find that out until recently when C's told the story on something. I was like, oh, so C's was supposed to move the bag. So yeah, I heard Big was really mad at C's for not removing that bag.
Yeah, I heard for like a week later, like Big would just ignore him. Like would literally like just be around him, not say nothing, pass him the blunt, no words, just like totally ignore him like he wasn't there.
You're the one that took the picture, so you can't even be mad at C's. Like I'm still trying to figure out why did you feel the need to, document this? Like what? I don't know. Big was crazy, so that was wild.
Yeah. Okay, so you were with Big. Do you remember the exact date that you went, when you left California?
I believe I left the day before the awards. If I'm not mistaken, he asked me to go. And for whatever reason, I had to go back to Philly. So it wasn't long at all. It was either the day before or 2 days before that I wound up leaving.
So you go back to Philly.
Mm-hmm.
And then March 9th happens. I remember I was talking to Lanson Rivera about this, and I guess that particular night, well, it was a bit of a crazy night because, Pac had gotten killed the year before, so there was sort of the whole thing about Big being in LA during that time. Big was wearing all red during the show, which is, kind of the blood colors that Death Row associated themselves with. And I guess they'd actually asked him to stay in the room that night and not go out. Mm-hmm. And Lance even said in our interview that I guess he was supposed to meet up with porn stars Janet Jackson and Heather Hunter that night.
He promised me that he wouldn't leave the room. I said, well, what are you going to do? He said, I'm waiting for Heather Hunter and Janet Jackson. At that time, they were the biggest porn stars on the planet. And I'm so envious. I'm like, fuck.
Okay, that's random, but okay.
Yeah, that's what he said. But ultimately, I guess Puff convinced him to go out and go to the Vibe party, so he agreed, and ultimately he went out. And then, leaving the Vibe party, a car pulls up and opens fire, and Big gets hit.
Right.
They get him to the hospital, and unfortunately, he doesn't make it.
Yep.
And then I remember C's was talking about how there was like this moment where when they got the news, everyone looked at each other and they were like, okay, who's going to call Biggie's mom?
Right.
And D-Rock was the one that made that phone call.
Right.
Who called his mother?
D-Rock. Because that was the next thing. After all the sobbing and crying, and we all were sitting there. Everybody was like, so who gonna call Miss Wallace? Phone went to one hand, went to another hand, went to another hand, went to another hand, so it got the D-Rock hand. And D-Rock was like, I'll do it. And he called her and told her. We picked up from the airport the next morning.
And I guess at some point after calling Biggie's mom, D-Rock calls you as well.
Yes. And I'm in disbelief. Like, D-Rock was hysterical. I mean, I had known D-Rock for a while at that point. I couldn't even understand what he was saying because he was so hysterical. And he's, trying to get the words out. And even just to hear him in that much pain was heart-wrenching enough. But, to hear that news, and I'm like, I'm thinking all kinds of stuff. Like, they gotta be, this has to be some sort of sick prank. Like, there's no way, like, this isn't happening. But, I mean, yeah, by the time he called, and the time difference and all of that, it was on the news and everything. So it was just like an unreal moment. It was unreal.
Did you break down and cry at that point?
Absolutely. I think I was in shock, for a few minutes, and then, it just kind of like overwhelmed me. Like, it's just like, what can you say to something like that? Or, you don't know what to feel or how to feel. You think, okay, maybe they're wrong. It's so many different emotions that run through your mind. It's really no way to explain it.
Do you ever think that had you not left LA, you would probably be right there in the car with him when that happened, and you could have potentially been shot or killed yourself?
I mean, I've thought about it, but at the end of the day, I wasn't there. So, it's just more so the loss of him more than anything, other than me thinking about, oh, that could have been me,
Yeah, I mean, it was sad because, after he passed, his album comes out and he's got these great songs like Going Back to Cali, which basically is an attempt to say, hey, listen, there is no East Coast, West Coast beef. I love Cali.
Right.
I love going out to Cali. And, ironically, he gets killed in Cali. And then the song comes out and it's just sort of like a very bittersweet moment listening to it for the first time.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of songs on there that, you listen to and you're like, damn, he didn't even get to, watch the whole thing come to fruition as far as his album, as much work as he put into it.
Yeah. Okay, so the funeral happens and you're actually at the actual ceremony itself, right?
Right.
What was that like, being in that room with his casket there and everyone else there?
Honestly, I don't even think, I kind of almost feel like I was having an outer body experience. Like, it was just so much going on, like, during the funeral. It's almost like it wasn't happening, if that makes sense. It was so surreal, like, to see him in a coffin, and I don't know. I think that was maybe the first time, like, it really hit me, like, wow, he's not coming back. Like, it was really, really hard. And then, just, it was so crowded. So, it's like, I don't know. I guess you're like kind of like trying to like stay contained, but it's almost indescribable. It was crazy. It was super crowded, and it wasn't really a moment where you can, kind of like deal with your grief at that moment. You just kind of gotta like, I think I remember me sitting there saying, okay, like, let this be over more than anything else. Like, it was hurting.
Well, I remember in our last interview, which, like I said, was like 13 years ago, you described how little Kim was at the funeral and she was rolling on the ground.
She was rolling on the floor. And I just found that to be, I'm not saying that people handle grief in different ways. I'm not saying that that's, maybe that's how she really was feeling, that she wanted to roll across the floor at a funeral. To watch someone roll on the floor in a funeral, a crowded funeral, where this man's wife is standing in front of the funeral, of the congregation, singing her heart out, and showing her appreciation, her love to, her children's father, whether they were together or not. I thought that was quite classy. For you to disrupt that and roll around on the floor, I just found that to be totally, I really don't even know what the word. I sat all the way in the back in the cut, and watched this whole thing unfold, me and my girlfriend. And I'm like, is she rolling on the floor, like up and down the aisle? Rolled all over the floor. I just never saw anything of that sort. And I mean, I grew up in the hood. I'm talking about hood. And I never seen anybody stop, drop, and roll all over the floor. Got a great roll game, by the way. You know, her roll game is vicious.
You know what? I actually regret that I said that because, you know, I mean, since I remember saying that, but since I said that, like, I have other people, friends that have passed away, and I know other, you know, people who have lost people super close to them that have passed away. And everybody deals with grief differently. I guess me just being like kind of like the person that I am, I try to like contain a lot of my emotions, but you really can't put a constraint on how you feel about somebody, and especially in a situation like that where they're gone forever. So I don't know. I think that was like wrong. I shouldn't have said that. You know, I really do regret saying that.
That's very big of you, actually. You know, and I think that Kim is going to watch this and appreciate that statement.
Yeah, I mean, I do. I can't imagine how she felt. Like, I don't know. That was immature. I shouldn't have said that because you definitely cannot gauge someone's grief and how they feel. Like, I mean, I'm sure she was just as hurt as the rest of us.
I mean, listen, we've interviewed a lot of people who have dealt with death. And I remember one person we interviewed, they were saying how I think when their father died, their mother actually jumped into the actual open casket. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like that's what I'm saying.
That was the type of hurt they were going. They literally jumped into the open hole into the ground.
You can't put a reaction just because your reaction would be one way on how someone else's, you know, how someone else feels about their grief. Like, I was like, that was really immature of me to say that. Like, that's not cool.
Well, after the actual private ceremony, there was the procession through Brooklyn where they were playing Hypnotize. And I don't think you've ever seen anything in Brooklyn like that before or after.
No. I mean, you know, Big was an icon, you know. Even at that time, it was like when he was still living, he was becoming an icon. So, you know, like, just the love that I'm sure Brooklyn in particular had for him was immense. Like, you know, like, it was just a really, really sad day.
Well, yeah, because Big didn't rep just New York. He repped Brooklyn.
Right.
In particular.
That's
in like
what I'm
every
saying.
Song.
Yeah. So I know Brooklyn felt it, you know, they felt it the hardest.
Yeah. Yeah, very sad time. Very sad time for hip hop. I remember when it was all happening. I was on the West Coast at the time, but it was like, I mean, we were all Biggie fans. I mean, yeah, the East Coast, West Coast thing was something that was pumped up, but no one really, you know, no average hip hop fan really took it seriously like that.
Right.
We're fans of everybody.
It's like unbelievable, you know?
Yeah. I mean, Miss Wallace ended up suing LAPD, and ultimately it was, it was dropped. And I can honestly say, you know, the Tupac murder, I have a pretty good idea about who did it and how it happened. I interviewed one of the guys in the car, Keefy D. But whenever anyone asks me about the Biggie murder, to this day, I'm honestly not sure. There's a couple theories, but at no point can I say, oh, I can tell you who did it. It was this guy, or it was this guy, or this is what was behind it. I'm honestly in the dark. And I've talked to more people than damn near anybody. I mean, do you have any idea? And you don't even have to say it, but do you have any idea what really happened?
No. I wish I did. And I mean, I hope that someday they, you know, they get some cop that's like, you know, I'm going to solve this case and it comes to a resolution, you know, just to even just bring his family some peace, you know.
I mean, yeah, it's happening with the Tupac case as we speak.
Right.
Las Vegas PD just, raided Keefy D's house, and then, you know, there's talks that there might be some indictments or whatever. This is 27 years later. So it may happen at one point, but unlike the Tupac case, it's not cut and dry with the Biggie case.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's crazy. It's definitely a crazy situation.
You were going through a lot of other situations. Didn't your dad end up dying from cancer around that time?
Yeah. My dad had died a year earlier. And then one of my best friends actually died 2 weeks before Big died. So I was like, it was just like back-to-back drama. Craziness.
Didn't you consider suicide at that point?
No.
No?
No, I tattooed a giant black widow on my back, but no, I didn't consider suicide at that point.
Well, there was a quote that I read from you. You said, I'm a realist who believes in learning from mistakes and tragedy. Plus, I have my kids to live for. I knew I had to keep on keeping for them and myself.
Yeah, I may have said that, but I didn't say anything about suicide.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, so Big dies, and then, there's still the business part of what's happening. And Big was partnered with Lance on Rivera, who at that point started to ramp up on entertainment. And he ends up signing Cameron, and he also signed you.
Yes.
And this was through Epic.
Yes, through Epic.
Now, the first song you put out, was that Money off the Wu soundtrack?
Yep, that was the first song.
Okay, and you went on to write all your other songs, but this particular song was written by the Lox.
Yeah, because Un believed when he first signed me that, in his own words, female rappers can't write. So we need to find someone to write for you. And I remember me telling him, like, you've heard me rap my own music. And he's like, yeah, no, we're going to get the best writers for you. And me being like, huh? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I was just like, okay, because at the time, I don't know anything about the music business. I'm fresh out of Philly. So yeah, the Lox, he sent me to Maryland with the Lox, and they wrote Money, and then he put that out as the first single. And then after that, I really just felt like I had a point to prove, which was I don't need anybody to write for me. Like, that's actually, as I always say, I actually prefer the writing process more than the actual rapping process. So eventually he got it, but at that, particular time when I first got signed, he just had this firm belief that girls can't write rhymes.
Well, I think it was around that time that the Horse and Carriage remix comes out for Cameron, and that featured Big Pun, Wyclef, Silk the Shocker, and you.
Yes.
Okay, and I mean, Horse and Carriage was a big song.
It was.
So now you're on the remix, so I feel like things are starting to kind of build up for you at that point.
Right.
Okay, and then that next year in 99, you put out Stand Up featuring Ghostface Killer from Wu-Tang.
Right.
You guys seem kind of cozy in that music video.
I know, everybody says that, but it wasn't like that at all. He was just mad cool. It wasn't like that at all.
Okay. I mean, around that time, what was your experience being signed as a rapper and being on Entertainment, which is, Big's partner's label, and, Cameron is going into his own and so forth. Like, I mean, are you feeling the music industry at this point?
No, because I feel like I don't think that they knew what to do with me as an artist. Like, everyone seemed to have their own vision of what I should be. And by me not, knowing really anything at that point about the music business, I'm being pulled in 100 different directions as to what my quote unquote image should be. And I feel like my image was what it was when I got signed. I had red hair. Like, it wasn't like they sat me down and transformed me or did a makeover. Like, this is how I walked in. Why do we have to change me into some version of myself that I'm not? And I don't know if it all was or if it was and Sony, but obviously most of my I guess, like, how I should be conforming conversations came from Un. So after a while, I started kind of feeling like Un was like a Svengali kind of thing. Like he was very controlling over every aspect of what was going on. And I think in his mind, I don't want to speak for him, but I think in his mind, he wanted me to be like a pop rapper, like a rap version of like Britney Spears or something, which I'm not. So me trying to conform to what, he wanted as far as records, it was becoming a huge problem, like a huge problem.
Well, you're signed to Lance on Rivera for entertainment. And, there was rumors, and I'm going to lead into this part of the story, that the two of you were romantic. Is there any truth in that?
No.
None at all?
No.
Okay. So December of 1999, Jay-Z is about to drop his album, Life and Times of S. Carter, Volume 3. And the album ends up leaking. And it's all over the place. Jay-Z is stressed out over the situation. And there's rumors about who's behind the leak and so forth. And allegedly there's a name that keeps coming up in these rumors, and that's Lance. Which by the way, is not confirmed on any level. And I interviewed Lance, and he said that was a crazy concept, which I agree with, because Lance was not in the bootleg business at the time or ever. So they ended up going to a party themselves, and then they ended up going to Q-Tip's party.
Right.
And when they walked in that party, there was a lot of people there. There was Puffy, there was Lil' Kim, there was C's, there was Busta Rhymes, there was, of course, Q-Tip. And Jay-Z saw Lance on Rivera and his brother there. And this is where the story gets a little bit fuzzy. Jay-Z has one version. I interviewed Lance. He gave another version. According to Lance, he was surrounded by Jay-Z and some of his people. Jay-Z said, "You broke my heart." And then one of his people hit him in the head and then stabbed him up. He claims that Jay-Z never actually stabbed him.
He's saying that now, you mean?
Now
he wasn't saying that then.
Okay, and I'll get to that. I'll get to that in a second.
All right.
Okay? So in my interview with Lance said that Jay-Z did not stab him.
Jay, bunch of us is in there. I ended up getting surrounded by a bunch of people. It was probably 10 knives that I knew of, and I ended up getting stabbed at the Kit Kat Club.
Was Jay-Z the one that actually stabbed you?
No. Jay-Z was not the guy who actually stabbed me that night.
But Jay-Z was there when you got stabbed. Was actually in front of you when you got stabbed.
It was like, yeah. Me and Jay-Z had a conversation while, right before I got hit in the head with a champagne bottle. And it was a brief conversation, and I was looking at him like, what are you talking about? And you fucking the money up right now.
Well, what did he tell you?
He just kept saying, "You broke my heart. You broke my heart." And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, you're bucking right now, bro. You getting ready to fuck up everything. And, and I don't know where people got Jay-Z stabbed me from, because if anybody knows Jay-Z, Jay-Z's a nice guy.
Now, in that same interview, I brought up Chris Gotti's version of this story. Now, Chris Gotti was right there when it happened.
Right.
He said that he saw the confrontation. He saw Jay-Z stab Lance. Lance dropped. And Chris said that he took the knife from Jay, put him in his car, and got him out of there. And he also said that him and Lance don't have any issues. He doesn't have any beef with Lance. He just happened to be there, and this was the situation. Now.
Okay.
you go to that party
Yes.
after all the commotion happened.
Right. I walk in as everyone's running out. So I see, all of everybody in hip hop, literally, because it was that crowded, running out. I see Jay, I see Eve, I see all kinds of people, but they're everybody's just, in a panic. And I'm walking in and I'm not really knowing what's going on because I got there late. It was me and two of my girlfriends, and we had been drinking. So we're kind of laxy dazzle with it, just walking through, what the hell's going on? It cleared out so fast that by the time I walked towards the back, and mind you, I didn't know where Un was. I didn't know where anybody was. I was just coming to the party. I actually walked up and Un was on the ground. And I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm stabbed. Jay stabbed me. So I'm like, what? And he's like, Jay-Z stabbed me. And I'm like, what are you saying? I'm stop saying that pretty much. What are you saying? I just didn't think he knew what he was saying. I didn't know if he was stabbed. If I'm not mistaken, he had on either had on some sort of big coat or big shirt to the point where I didn't see any blood or anything. So I'm really not knowing what's going on. But by the time I, look up, it's nobody else in the club. It's literally just me and my two girlfriends and Un, and maybe some people that worked at the club or whatever. And he's, laying there, and he kept saying it. So the police come and they take us all in for questioning. Once they got us in for questioning, by my girlfriends and I being drunk, they made us go in a cell and basically take a nap. Because we wouldn't have been of any use to try to interview at that point. And then once the interview was over, they're asking me what happened. And I'm like, I don't know. I walked in and he was, on the ground like this. So I didn't see anything. I don't know what happened. So, I'm basically just going off of what Un was saying at the time. But then fast forward to whenever you're saying you interviewed Un, now he's saying that Jay-Z didn't stab him. So I'm assuming this is a recent interview.
A few months ago, yeah.
So I don't know. My whole point in that is you waited all this time to clarify that?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a fuzzy story. Like I said, the story he told me doesn't coincide with your story or Chris Gotti's story. Or Jay-Z had his own version of the events also that basically said that he stabbed him. Right. Also in his book, Decoded. So,
I mean, if you want my opinion, I don't think Jay stabbed Un. That's just my opinion. I didn't see anybody stab anybody. I just saw the aftermath. So I don't know. I don't know. The story gets crazier. It's just unsolved mysteries or something. I have no clue. I just know what he told me, and and he kept saying it. I mean, that's all he was saying. He wasn't saying I'm hurting. He just kept saying it over and over and over again. And I'm like, stop saying that. Just be quiet. Relax. I've never been stabbed, so I don't know. I can't even imagine, what type of emotions or trauma or pain he was in. And, I don't know. It was just, it's just weird. Because for him to say, all this time later, okay, well, no, he didn't stab me. And I'm like, so that happened in what, 2000?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and it's 2023. I just kind of feel like if you knew that, you kind of should have rectified that a long time ago.
Yeah, I mean, the story is even crazier because he basically said in our interview that he thinks that Steve Stoute somehow manipulated the situation to get Jay-Z to stab him to try to separate Jay-Z from Dame Dash. So there's all types of really crazy conspiracy theories around this.
Unfortunately, I got stabbed that night, but the reality to it is, Nas, and I don't know why didn't nobody believe him. On Ether, he said talked about the incident. You know, like he let people know, like, yo, your man stabbed on you, you took the blame for it. You know, and unfortunately, you know, he was caught up in a power struggle. You know, it was all about the power to, you know, to get rid of Dame Dash, you know, and take Jay-Z to the next level without Dame, you know. And it was, you know, Dame should stop blaming Leo and Todd Moskowitz and start blaming Steve Stout.
I've never heard that. That sounds bizarre. So I don't know. This may just be, you know, one of the great all-time hip-hop mysteries, because I've never heard that version.
I mean, recently Cameron did an interview where he said that you're the reason why Lance got stabbed by Jay-Z.
Yeah, I've heard that too. But I mean, come on, let's be realistic. Like, you really think that these men that with great careers are running around stabbing people over me? Like, that sounds insane. But yeah, I've heard that too. Like I said, it's so many different versions of the story and so many like convoluted, you know, extra parts of it, sidebars. It gets crazier and crazier.
Did you and Jay-Z ever have a relationship of any sort?
We were friends.
Okay. So that's it though. There wasn't any sort of jealousy, love triangle, weird, nothing.
No, that's insane.
Okay. Got it. Okay, so you had recorded a whole album for Entertainment called Cold as Ice. And it had Ghostface Killer, you know, because of that single, but also had The Brat, Lady of Rage,
Yes.
Gangsta Boo, Mobb Deep, Cameron, Nori, and DJ Premier did some of the music.
Yes.
Now, it was promotionally released on August 3rd, but something happened where it didn't get commercially released.
Right.
So what happened?
If you could tell me, I would appreciate it, because I don't even know what happened. There was a lot of really like shady stuff going on. And again, you know, me just being naive to the music business and not understanding my deal, not really even understanding the music business at that time. There was a situation where I honestly don't remember all of the specifics, but one of the singles off of the album was being sold, and I didn't know anything about it. And I remember going to and saying, what the hell is going on? Like, why is this single being sold? Like, why am I getting all of these calls and people are telling me this single is out or whatever? And all I remember is writing me a check on the spot, not explaining anything. He just wrote me a check for like a nice amount of money. So I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Like, this is not cool. And at that point, I started realizing like this isn't gonna work. Like, I don't know what's going on. The album kept getting pushed back. I wasn't getting any, you know, logical explanations as to why. And I just was like, why? Okay, so I come to you about a record that is being sold and you just write me a check. Don't explain why you're writing me a check. Don't explain anything. So at that point, I'm realizing like this is not working. In the interim of all of that, Un kept saying, we still need more records. Mind you, at this time, I'm pretty sure I had recorded probably somewhere between 50 and 60 records. That's how many records I had did. And he introduced, no, as a matter of fact, I was at a Powerhouse show in Philadelphia, which is like a big concert, and I met Irv Gotti. And I think I was talking to him about, you know, possibly producing a record or whatever. It was like a brief exchange. And I think I had kept saying, we don't have the right record. And I'm like, we don't have the right record. Like, we've shot, 2-3 videos off of the Cold as Ice album, and you keep saying we don't have the right record. We don't have the right record. So I don't know what the hell was going on. I know that I think around that time, I believe that Un's deal with Sony was already kind of shaky because, you know, obviously he wasn't producing the albums that he was supposed to be producing or putting them out fast enough or whatever. And I just started realizing like stuff wasn't right. So I started asking Un to release me, and he was like, no, you're like, basically, he said, if you want to leave, you have to pay me, I think he said $1.5 million, or somebody has to pay me $1.5 million for you to be released. So that caused a huge, you know, obviously a huge problem with me and Un. And around at the same time, you know, I would talk to Irv here and there about different stuff or whatever. And I just remember, you know, explaining the situation to Irv one time, and he was like, okay, let me see what, you know, I could find out or figure out or whatever. Irv calls me and says, Charli, you're not signed to Un. Un doesn't even have a deal with Sony anymore. Un is not with Sony. So I'm like, what? He is like, no. Now, time frame wise, this was like a 7-month time span. So within these 7 months that Un is telling me that somebody has to pay him all this money for me to be released, he doesn't even have a deal, and I didn't know. So that just kind of like put the nail in the coffin for me with as far as our relationship situation, you know, with my album.
So after that, you end up signing to Murder Inc. And at the time, Murder Inc. is on fire. Ja Rule is one of the biggest artists out there. He's still on the come up because his biggest records haven't even come out yet.
Right.
And you get embraced. I guess Gotti announced it's supposed to be a partnership with Revlon and you, since you have the whole modeling thing going on.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like they're putting a lot of push behind you.
Right.
And you guys put out Down Ass Bitch, you and Ja Rule, which I actually looked it up, has 80 million streams right now. And that's your biggest song that you've ever been on?
Probably. Yeah, probably.
So how did it feel to have a song that big after putting in all that work, all this time and all the tragedy and everything?
I mean, obviously it felt good because I felt like I was finally at a label that understood me. Like Irv, like nurtured the fact that I could write so well and wanted me to write for other artists. Like he wasn't like trying to take our publishing, like, you know what I mean? It was a way different situation. So, I mean, just the fact that I got to be the artist that I wanted to be, nobody was trying to like mold me into some sort of like pop hybrid rapper or whatever. Like it was a way, way different experience.
Right, because then they put out Irv Gotti Presents the INC, the compilation album, and the lead single is Down For You, which is you, Ja Rule, Ashanti, and Vita.
Right.
That song is number 6 on Billboard. It's gotten 20 million streams today. And there's a whole music video. Bobby Brown and Whitney Houston are in the video, right?
Yep, they sure are.
So you got this big look suddenly for a song that you're actually like the featured artist on.
Right.
As opposed to like you know, as a feature for someone else.
Right, right.
You're also on We Still Don't Give a Fuck, No One Does It Better. The compilation album does well. It debuted at number 3, and it goes gold.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously it's not just your album, but you're prominent. You're on, I think, 3 songs, and you're on the lead single.
Right.
So does it feel at that point like, okay, things are finally going to really start ramping up, and I'm about to get in my own?
Yeah. I mean, it definitely felt like that. Like the momentum was there. Everything seemed to be going on the right track.
Right. Nas around that time does the Pledge remix.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a rumor that he was going to sign to Murder Inc.
Yeah, I mean, I think Irv was trying to get him to sign to Murder Inc. I don't know, what happened with all of that, but I remember I'm in the Pledge video, so, I remember Nas being there and, at that specific moment, the momentum was definitely like, Irv's like, yo, like, Nas is going to come to Murder Inc., which would have been crazy, but, obviously that didn't happen.
Any idea why?
No, probably just music industry politics,
Yeah. Okay, because then Ja Rule drops the Last Temptation album, and you're actually on the song,
yes.
The Last Temptation. And that album goes platinum.
Mm-hmm.
So once again, you got another win.
Right.
On Murder Inc. And then things start to go a little left. Vita ends up leaving Murder Inc. Cadillac Time, Black Child were supposed to have albums that come out. Mm-hmm. Those don't come out. They get shelved. There was a song that next year, Ashanti comes in the picture. And then she starts to blow up. Right? And I remember what's interesting. I actually looked this up. There's a song by Ashanti, the Rain On Me remix, which is Ashanti, you, Ja Rule, and Hussein Fatal from the Outlaws.
Right.
And this is kind of the first song where someone from Tupac's camp and someone from Biggie's camp, you, are actually on a song together.
I never looked at it like that, but yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah.
Right? I mean,
I never looked at it like that.
One of the Outlaws doing a song with Biggie's girl, and
yeah, that's crazy when you put it like that.
And of course, I mean, later on, I know both the Outlaws and Junior Mafia, and they actually ended up doing a song together. I mean, officially, like a Outlaws Junior Mafia song got put together by, I think, DJ K-Slay. Mm-hmm. Rest in peace. And now everyone's cool and everything else like that. But at the time, there was a lot of kind of fuck you forever kind of feelings on both sides. So it was nice to see that come together. Well, and then around that time, 50 Cent starts to blow up.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of his platform was his beef with Ja Rule. And 50 actually disses you on one of his early, I think, mixtapes, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he did.
You had a whole mixtape dissing 50.
I did.
An entire, not one song. There's one song that I heard, but there's a whole mixtape that you put together.
It's a whole mixtape, yes.
But then things start to go more crazy.
Right.
On January 3rd of 2003, Murder Inc.'s office gets raided by the feds.
Mm-hmm.
What they were trying to do is they're trying to find evidence that Murder Inc. was laundering money for Supreme.
Right.
When that raid happened and you're on the label and you're on the come up, how did you feel?
I don't think that Irv and I were on the best terms by that time. So if my timeline is right, I don't think we were on the best terms around that time. So honestly, I wasn't really even focused on any of that was going on in that specific moment.
Right, because right around that time, well, I guess the overall feel by Irv was that we're so huge. Murder Inc. is so many hit records. I remember Always on Time with Ashanti and Ja Rule became the biggest song out of that label, and they were completely on fire. I guess, according to you, in some of your interviews, you said that Irv really wasn't tripping. He felt that Murder Inc. was so untouchable that 50 Cent can't do anything to him, so they weren't responding, they weren't going back and forth. But you felt that was a mistake.
Absolutely, because I'm you're looking at this from the perspective of, Murder Inc. is super hot, we're here, but you have to understand that most things, especially at that time, that blew up, they start in the street, and he was getting hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter in the street. And I'm you're not paying attention to the base. You're just looking at it from this perspective. Anybody that starts here can get there if they keep building that momentum. And I didn't feel like Irv was focused on the fact that, 50 stuff was starting to really bubble in the street and people were really paying a lot of attention. So, I think he he kind of missed the mark. Like he missed his way to, you know, kind of nip it in the bud if that's what he wanted to do.
Well, yeah, because Ja Rule dropped his next album that year, Blood in My Eye, which was the fifth album, which included like Clap Back and some other diss songs. And that album ended up being Ja's least performing album.
Right.
You know, it's like, I mean, it's a weird situation. It's like, well, had Ja just stayed the course and said, you know something, fuck all this, I'm going to come up with these huge pop records, like Always on Time, things could have worked out differently maybe, but I don't know. I felt by the time that he was dissing 50 back, it was almost like too late. It's like he should have either done it sooner or just not done it at all.
I think it should have been done sooner. I think it would have been a different situation. I think the ignoring him, you know, stance that Irv kind of was taking, and I mean, from what I remember, it was mostly Irv, like, telling all the artists, like, Ja included, and Ja, you know, was damn near like Irv's partner. But I guess whatever he was, you know, telling Ja, like, no, we're not going to do this, we're not going to do that, you know, Ja's like, okay, cool. Plus, Murder Inc. was so hot, he didn't really think that anything could, you know, knock us down any notches. So to me, it was a mistake.
Well, by October of 2003, you officially leave Murder Inc. You had some comments about it. You said, I felt like when I met Irv, he was one way. And then as I was leaving, because I left Murder Inc., I wasn't kicked off. I wasn't dropped. I left. It was getting a little crazy, a little gangster, actually. We didn't get into this. We don't go into the ifs, ands, and buts, but what I did and how I did what I did, but it was a little gangster.
Well, I mean, yeah, I'm not going to go into the specifics of that. But again, I'm from Philly. At the time I was married, and the guy I was married to was also from Philly. And let's just say him and Irv were not, they come from two totally different, they're cut from two different cloths. So yeah, it could have gotten way worse than it actually did if I hadn't left, put it like that.
Well, I found this one quote where you had claimed that some of the budget that was supposed to go towards your album was spent up by Irv, and you had mentioned something about an $8,000 a week ecstasy habit.
Well, I think that's kind of like self-admitted on Irv's part. I don't know if it was actually coming out of my budget, but I think Irv pretty much self-admitted, and I don't remember that quote, so I don't know the exact like amount of drugs that Irv was taking or whatever, but you know, there was speculation that, you know, some of that stuff was coming out of artists' budgets. And you have to remember, when I met Irv, he didn't even drink. He didn't drink, he didn't do drugs, he didn't do anything. So to watch somebody that's like, you know, totally sober at all times, like turn into like this, I don't know, like you don't know which Irv you're going to get on any given day. That's a lot on a person that, you know, is entrusting you with their career and trusts you as far as, you know, making these records. Because I did. I trusted Irv implicitly with, you know, decisions as far as my music. Because he is that, you know, he's that dope. But when drugs become involved to the extent that, you know, he was dealing with them, then you might get, you know, this creative genius Irv, or you might get crazy Irv. And it's not a good feeling. It's not a good feeling.
Well, recently on Drink Champs, he mentioned that him and Ashanti were having an affair while he was married.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see any of that? And did that create any sort of problems in Murder Inc.?
I mean, I think Irv's focus on Ashanti was interfering with Murder Inc. business. Like, if we're in London and we have a show, why is Irv here? Like, Irv should be back in New York in the office and facilitating, you know, all his other artists' albums. Like, he was coming on the road with us. So he was just like popping up everywhere. I'm like, you're popping out of the suitcase. Like, I look up and you're popping out the suitcase. I'm like, Irv's in London. What the hell is going on? So it was confusing. It's like, where's your focus? You know? So it just started becoming more and more volatile.
Well, yeah, after you left in 2004, Murder Inc. were actually asked to leave Def Jam offices because the Fed raids just kind of got too much. And I remember I used to go by Def Jam around that time. I mean, this was a building in the middle of Midtown that was shared with Microsoft.
Yeah.
So Bill Gates got tired of having the feds roll up in the building where his company was.
Hey,
and, you know,
I'm sure he did. Yeah, that's not the building for all of that. So
exactly. Yeah. And then Def Jam ends up dropping Murder Inc. That next year, in 2005, Irv Gotti and his brother Chris Gotti end up surrendering to authorities, and they got officially charged by the feds for money laundering and conspiracy to launder money.
Right.
Me and Chris, and Irv actually got into conversations about this, and Ja as well. I mean, I talked to everyone over there. And what was interesting about that case, I mean, number one, the feds have a 98% conviction rate. So going to court is sort of crazy to begin with. But I remember, according to Chris, he said that, during the whole case, they were offered probation if they were found, if they pleaded to like a lesser charge.
Right.
And they actually refused.
Right.
They said, no, like this whole thing is bullshit. We're not laundering money for Supreme.
Yeah, that's what the feds was trying to, push forward, that we was laundering money, and we gave us $2 million and we laundered it for them. There was a lot of crazy stories and accusations. And this is basically what the feds was telling us. You can't make somebody like that, like Preem, that is our friend, childhood friend, a part of your business. Because if you do, we're gonna fucking come after you and say you're starting a drug enterprise, or you're laundering money or whatever. Because this is what they tried to put on us, to say we was starting a drug enterprise because we had X amount of felons working on our payroll. Preem wanted to do a movie, a Donald Goines movie called Crime Partners.
Okay.
And so that deal was done through Def Jam. Gotti helped him get it done and whatever. But, here's a dude that just came home with a passion to make films. Want to do something different besides being on the streets.
Yeah.
So I thought this was America. I thought this was, land of second chances, home of the free, you know what I'm saying?
So because of that,
that's
feds try to...
Right, that's where it all came in. But, there's other stories out there that the feds were told other things by other people, and these are the reasons why they came in and did what they did.
The feds were just basically out to get Supreme by any way they can. And also, of course, 50 Cent was throwing all that into the air and, putting all the negative publicity on that. But ultimately, they went to court and they won.
I know. That's insane. That's crazy. Because as you said, the feds do have a 99% conviction rate. So I don't know. Maybe they were just trying to make a name, make it as big of a fiasco as possible or whatever. But I mean, if they truly knew they didn't do anything wrong, then I would have gambled that dice too.
So after you left Murder Inc., it seems like you affiliated yourself with Game.
Was it Game first?
I believe so, because you were on the... Hold
you're
on a
right.
second.
It was Game. I met Game through, I think I met Game through Mark Pitts. If I recall him, I think Game was in Philly one time and he told me to go meet Game somewhere. And I went and met with Game and we were just talking or whatever. And, he was cool. And the next thing I know, he was recording in New York. And I started going there and I wasn't really like recording at first. I just was kind of hanging out, filling everybody out. And then I remember they had a beat up one day and I just wrote this crazy record and Game was kind of blown away. Like, yo, like, because at that point, most of the guys that I would meet in the music industry never thought I wrote my rhymes. They always thought it was Cam. Even when I met Irv, he's like, Cam writes your rhyme. Like, nobody writes my rhymes. I write my own rhymes. So until I'm actually in the studio with them and they see that I do it, that's when they're finally like, oh shit, like she could really write. So I think when I did that, that's when Game was like really impressed. And at one point I was going to sign to Black Wall Street, but it like the deal that came up, it just wasn't right. And Game had another guy who had a studio in Atlantic City, which was obviously closer to Philly, that he was working with. And I don't remember the circumstances as to why we went to Miami to do something, but I wound up meeting Scott Storch. And I was there with the Game's, his representative, this guy. I think his name is Johnny.
Johnny Hooks.
Is
I know
that
exactly
his name?
what you're talking
Is Johnny
about.
Hooks?
This guy's a crook. He ended up stealing money from me, actually.
Oh my God, he was crazy.
Yes. Yeah, fuck Johnny Hooks.
Oh shit. Yeah, Johnny Hooks from AC.
I went in on a real estate deal with him and he just stole the money. I guess he ended up getting busted by the feds himself at one point, and then like he ended up basically stealing everybody's money and so forth. Yeah, this dude's a piece of shit.
Are you serious? Oh shit.
Yeah, well, because I was actually cool. I think you're talking about New Jersey Devil. He had the studio in Atlantic City, and me and Jersey Devil was actually really cool. We used to go out there and hang out with him.
As hell. Yeah,
he introduced me. He introduced me to Johnny Hooks, and then I ended up getting ripped off by Johnny Hooks. Fuck him.
Damn. Well, maybe that worked out for the best then, because while I was there, I don't remember. It wasn't a record for me. It was a record for somebody else. And I don't know I didn't know Scott at the time. I was a huge fan of his music, but I didn't know him. And I think he asked me to write a record for somebody that he was working with or something. And one thing about me is I write really fast. So he gave me the beat. I wrote the record really fast or whatever. And he was like blown away. And I remember him pulling me outside and was like, who's that guy you're with? Talking about Johnny Hooks. And so I explained the whole situation or whatever. And he's like, are you signed to him? Or are you signed with Game or whatever? And I'm like, no, but we're working on some stuff or whatever. And the next thing I know, Scott walks away. He comes back 5-10 minutes later. He hands me a check for a really, really nice amount of money that I really could have used around that time. And I'm looking at this check and I'm like, what is this? And he was like, I need you to work with me. He was like, whatever this dude want, like, if I need to write him a check, I'll write him a check and he could leave. I need you to stay. And I'm like, this is fucking nuts. Like, I'm not knowing if he's just, trying to do some baller shit. Like, I'm not really knowing what's going on, but he was dead serious. And that's basically how the Game situation ended. And I started working with Scott Storch.
Yeah, I interviewed Scott Storch in Miami around that time at that mansion on Star Island.
Right.
And he had the Bugatti in front, the Ferrari, the Rolls Royce. He was spending money like on an insane level. He had so much money coming in and he was just blowing it so fast. And he ended up blowing all his money at one point. He went bankrupt.
That's how crazy it was. People were asking me if he dealt drugs. I'm like, no, I don't think so. But I mean, that was also a crazy situation. So.
Yeah. Well, he was doing a lot of drugs. He wasn't selling them. He was actually doing a lot of drugs during that time. And we talked about that. He had a cocaine habit. He had an insane weed habit. I mean, it was crazy. There was girls all around. I think Paris Hilton was around. Kim Kardashian was around. It was wild.
That was a wild time. But I mean,
a wild time.
Music wise, it was a good time. But just atmosphere wise, it was a lot. A lot.
Well, in 2009, the Notorious movie came out. And you were nowhere to be found in that movie in terms of a character, nothing.
Right.
Were you bothered by that at all?
No, because at the end of the day, and I always say this, I've said it so many times, I feel like I don't know the exact, people that did the movie. I know his mom had something to do with it or whatever. But I always feel like if somebody's really going to tell a big story, I really feel like the only two people that could really tell it accurately and right is D-Rock or C's. That's just how I feel. I'm not saying, whoever can't make a movie about Big, but I mean, if you really want to get an in-depth look at the man and really know how he was, the only two people that could do that are D-Rock and C's. So I wasn't really tripping off of that. Like, whatever.
I mean, the movie itself was okay. I mean, it wasn't a bad movie. I'm glad I watched it, but I wouldn't put it, it wasn't like a Ray. You know what I mean? With Jamie Foxx.
I never watched the whole movie, but like just from what I gathered, it seemed like it was more focused on his personal life. And I'm like, why would you make a movie about this man whose, musical legacy may live on forever as far as hip hop is concerned and focus it all on his personal life? I don't know. That's just me.
Yep. We fast forward a few years to 2013. And we did an interview with this guy named Bryant Peanut Brown from Detroit. And
why did you do it? Oh, wait, why did you do an interview with him? Just curious.
Well, his story kind of ties into the Cash Doll story.
Oh,
we
okay.
just interviewed Cash Doll.
Okay.
And talked about that whole thing because he had this label called B&B Records, which stands for Breaking Major Barriers. And on that label was Cash Doll, like I had mentioned, Ray J, Trick, Breezy, and you.
I was a co-owner. I was an artist too.
Okay.
Yeah, we started the label together.
Got it. Well, things get a little fuzzy around this story because we did an interview with him and he claims that he had an open relationship with his wife and you were one of his wives.
I was one of his wives?
Yes, he said that.
Okay.
Open my mind up to the many wives, you know what I'm saying? Because I've been taking care of her, you know what I'm saying, and family members for a minute, you know what I mean? So I just learned about that multiple wife shit from her.
Was Charli one of your wives?
Yeah.
At some point?
Yeah, but at some point she was. Yeah.
Let me see. So I was a wife? Okay,
well,
so I am aware that Peanut has an open relationship with his wife or whatever, but I wouldn't consider myself one of his wives. I mean, we did have a relationship, but a wife, no. But I can tell you this. Peanut, we call him Peanut, gave me one of the greatest gifts of my life, which is he introduced me to one of the greatest people I've ever met. Like, this person was a mentor. Like, they really helped change my life. And his name is Charles Silk Dunn. So without me meeting Peanut, I would have never met Charles Silk Dunn, who is an amazing person and like literally changed my life.
Well, that label had a lot of drama because Peanut had like a drug background and the feds were investigating him. I think he went to prison for a while and so forth. So there's a lot of craziness around it. A Cash Doll left the label. I think she had to sue him and there was just a lot of mess around the situation.
Right.
How would you describe it being over there?
Well, when I was there, the mixtape, obviously my project was the first project because we had just started the label together. So my mixtape was the first mixtape that we put out there, and it wound up being nominated for like BET Award of that year. So like, we were running around going to the Grammys. We were like, my experience music wise there was fine. It was just, you're dealing with somebody that doesn't really know the music business. So, that's kind of a hard thing. You can't really like start a label and be successful if you don't really like know the business. But I mean, as I said, I can't be mad at the situation because in my mind, he gave me that gift, and that's like the best thing ever for me.
Are you guys still on good terms? You guys ever still talk, or is it part of your past now?
No, I don't talk to him at all.
Okay. In 2019, we find out that you guys are actually part of the whole VladTV Growing Up Hip Hop franchise.
Right.
And your daughter, Siani,
Mm-hmm.
is part of it. So what was that like now being on TV and being part of this network television reality show?
I mean, I really only did that for my daughter because she really wanted to do it. Like, it wasn't really something that I was so, like, keened up to do. But she's a DJ, so she really wanted to, you know, get her name out there and explore her DJ thing on a larger platform. So, you know, and then Irv was involved with it or whatever. So I was like, all right, why not? But just from the perspective of reality TV, yeah, I don't think that's my calling at all.
Yeah, I'm not a fan. I've always turned down reality TV offers. It's just not my thing.
It wasn't a bad experience, but it wasn't like, you know, I couldn't see myself going season after season after season. I don't think I could do that.
I mean, if you think about all the years that you've been part of the music industry, how have you really managed to support yourself over all this time? Because, you know, you've had some records that have reacted, but not enough to really maintain a lifestyle with 2 kids and so forth. You know what I'm saying? You really have to get creative sometimes in the music industry and look at other ways to make money. How do you think you've done it and really maintained a comfortable lifestyle all this time?
Vlad, I'm from Philly. I keep trying to tell you, you're forgetting I'm from Philly. It's always a way. Like, you would be surprised. You'd be surprised. There's so much behind. Like, I always say, like, I think we mentioned it earlier, like, I don't care about being in front of the camera. Like, that doesn't do anything for me. You know, like, stuff that can be done behind the scenes, ghostwriting, like, things you would never be like, she has something to do with that. People would never even really know. And actually, right now, I'm working on something really big with somebody that you should definitely try to get on here, Tony Draper. Suave
Tony
House.
Draper from Suave House. Yeah,
Yes.
People have asked me about him all the time. I've been wanting to interview him.
He's elusive. He doesn't do interviews.
Yeah. He's always behind the scenes. He's like a very shadowy figure in hip hop.
But if you could get him on your podcast, I'm going to try to put a bid in for you because he's like, I don't do interviews. But we're working on something right now that you might be calling us back next year to talk about.
Okay. I love it. I'm a big fan. I mean, that's like 8 Ball and MJG and like all that like deep South hip hop.
He's amazing. And like, he's always been like a big homie to me, like a big brother. I've known him forever. And I mean, the ideas that he comes up with are just amazing. So we definitely have something in the works right now. So hopefully I can convince him to get on, do some interviews. He's like, I don't do interviews. I'm like, you got to do something. So.
Okay. And, you know, you mentioned that you and Irv Gotti reconnected.
Yes.
You know, for the reality show. Are you guys on good terms again?
Yeah, I saw Irv earlier this year. We were actually thinking about I think after like Irv and I had a conversation on the Growing Up Hip Hop show about how he should have just put my album out. And he called me and was like, what do you think about doing like a Best of Charli where we take like 5 old records and do like 5 new records? And I'm like, yeah, why not? You know what I'm saying? I'm with it. So, you know, we've been teeter-tottering. Irv's always all over the place, so it's hard to kind of lock him in. But, I mean, I didn't think it was a bad idea.
I remember he was kind of upset because Ashanti re-recorded some of her albums off Murder Inc.
Mm-hmm.
in order to kind of circumvent the whole, I think, publishing or master use.
Yeah.
You know, and he was upset this was happening, but a lot of artists like Taylor Swift are doing that these days. What's your take on that?
I mean, I think that artists should do what they can to get as much percentage, or if not all, of their music that they can. Because for so long, like, you look at, like, if I were to look at my contract from if I were to take my contract from entertainment and show it to probably like a lawyer now or like an artist that really understands content, they'd be like, this looks like some form of slavery. Like, they were that bad. They really were. They were that bad. So I feel like artists have way more, business savvy now. It's just so many different ways and avenues to make money. And, if you happen to be a Taylor Swift or somebody with a catalog that extensive, you know what I mean? You should definitely have as much control over it as you can.
Well, Charli Baltimore, appreciate you coming in for our first real interview. You've really defied the odds. To go from being a teenage mom of 2 to all these decades later, continuing to flourish and figuring out ways and being creative and so forth. I think a lot of people really wrote you off all along the way.
Yeah,
they didn't expect you to get to this point. I'm
in the shadows. Like, I don't do a lot of interviews either. So when people see me, they're like, oh, they don't know what to expect.
Yeah. But as you've seen in this interview, you've done a lot. And it sounds like you're still doing a lot.
I got some things.
And I think, like you said throughout the interview, it's that Philly. It's that hustler spirit within you that's allowed you to do that, because I think 99% of people in your position would have just said, let me go get a regular 9 to 5. Let me abandon all this. Let me just take the easy route and the safe route. But you didn't do that. You kept pushing the envelope and being creative and figuring out new ways to really, kind of work this system, because people don't understand how difficult the music industry is.
Right.
You go in as one thing, but most people will usually end up as something else. Like, for example, I came in as a DJ.
Right.
And now I'm doing VladTV. Like, I'm interviewing people because I figured out at one point that this DJ shit is not going to support me as I'm going into my 40s and 50s.
Right.
I had to figure out something that's more...
That's the best. That's the whole key to everything, is the transitioning. So I'm pretty sure at some point while you were DJing, you said, I got to think of my next move. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. While you were still DJing. That's the whole thing. You got to think of the next move while you're already in whatever move at that moment is bringing you income or whatever, success.
Yeah, I always say that. Like, throughout my whole life, I've always planned a decade ahead.
Right.
In my 20s, I'm like, what's going to happen in my 30s?
Right.
I may not be able to keep doing what I'm doing in my 20s, in my 30s, or in my 40s, or whatever else. Everyone wants to be a rapper, but you're not going to blow up as a rapper for the first time in your 40s or your 50s. That's just impossible.
You're right.
You have to. Now, you could be a legend in your 30s, 40s, and 50s, like a Jay-Z or someone, but you can't get your first break at age 60. It's not realistic.
Right.
So you always have to plan ahead. And it seems like you're someone that's always done that. You've never really lived life one day at a time and hoped that something would happen. You've always planned ahead. And I think you being from Philly and also being a mother, you're sort of forced to do that.
No, you are.
Yeah, and I just salute, I salute your success. And
thank you.
Looking forward to this Tony Draper project and seeing what you got next.
Absolutely. Thanks, Vlad.
Absolutely. Peace.